Alrighty, this video is actually brought to you by a comment I received, which is from Spect84. He says, "Now please break down the new arms buffs for us. I need to know if I can at least hang his arms and if the build changes. Specifically, should I put 2 points into Bloodborne, the bleed damage now? Thanks." So let's look at it, right? Right now, this is mainly referring to, I think, the 15% increased damage that Deep Wounds is doing. That technically goes into our survivability, because the damage that Deep Wounds does is healed to us at a 85% ratio, so technically we did receive a throughput healing buff, but our survivability remains unchanged, realistically. But would you take anything out to put a second point in Bloodborne, specifically for the change in Deep Wounds? And there's nothing really to change, is the problem. Right now, Arms has too much rage, so Sword of Storms is almost required on top of Barbaric Training to spend as much rage as possible to get back your Colossus Smash, right? Also, spending big rage means you get more overpower procs. They buffed Dreadnought again, so now all of our damage amps for Dreadnought are even better. So there's nothing really we can take out of this tree or move around to add a second point into Bloodborne just for the additional damage and potentially AoE throughput of adding Deep Wounds to other targets, at least in a single target scenario. This is where Arms still has problems, but let me touch on Mythic Plus first, and then we'll talk about the raid. Just to touch on Mythic Plus, the Arms problem realistically is still that, well, you can either go full single target or full AoE, right? There's no real in-between here. You lose a lot of single target throughput, you lose Fatality, Ashen Juggernaut, Massacre, Exhilarating Blows. Some people have been taking, like in my Bladestorm build, I don't take Cleave, I take Massacre instead to have a little more boss damage. But even then, realistically, because you're changing Test of Might, and for the kill, you're even spending points here in Bladestorm compared to these other single target focused points around the tree. Arms just does not have enough points to actually be able to do single target and AoE at the same time. Now, you've probably heard that, but the real question is, why is that a problem? What does that actually affect? So let's talk about, in the Mythic Plus setting, yeah, you're doing big AoE, but when I do damage to a boss, if the boss is the difficult part of the instance, right, like say it's Tyrannical Week, I'm doing between, I think, over 25,000 less single target DPS by having an AoE build versus single target build. And that is as Arms. As Fury, I only lose maximum, maybe max 10k DPS, right? So I am losing far less as Fury to be able to do AoE and single target damage compared to being able to do one or the other. The issue with Arms is Arms does better AoE than Fury, and it does better single target than Fury, but it can't do both. Where Fury can do both. It's flexible, it's malleable, it can be put into any situation and it'll work, right? And that's when I want to go into talking about raid and fight design, which we go into Simulation Craft here, and with the buffs, you can see Arms is actually higher than Fury now. It is even higher than like Rogue and like Sub. But you go, oh, there's no way Arms is better than Sub. But you look at this and it shows it's better than Sub. Well, how is that the case? It's because of fight design. Regardless of whatever sim you want to make, fight design dictates what's best, right? You're not going to be running Assassination Rogue on Smolderon. You're going to be running Sub Rogue, right? I don't know if this changes too much, but in terms of full single target, now you have more, because your class is running at 1.5-minute cooldowns anyway, now you can probably run Arms just fine on Smolderon. Fury might outperform Arms on Volacross specifically in terms of single target, just because Volacross has so little health compared to the boss before it in Agira that you're not really going to be able to get execute value or even stack fatality enough to get a lot of value out of the talent point because the boss just has no health. It's really weird how that ended up happening. So let's actually just think about the bosses, right? In terms of first boss, Naru. Arm's totally fine. The AoE doesn't matter as much. AoE is a little more for pad. But all of those side mobs die really quickly. Not a problem. You can play arms, whatever. Fury still has the advantage, specifically, I think, in Agira, just because of the amount of targets you're hitting, right? Fury hits up to 5 targets, and then there is Agira plus the 6 spears, right? But if you're positioning right, you can have Agira. You can have, like, if you're positioning right on that fight, like, you can have Agira here, and then you could have 2 stacks of the spears here and here, right behind the boss. And then if you position right here, you're hitting everything in this area. So based on fight design, Fury will still perform better on Agira than Arms will. But even then, at this point, it's all pad, right? It's all pad, it's all parse, it's whatever. I think you're totally fine just playing arms and then piping the boss and then having a little bit of secondary cleave on, like, this stack here. You're doing just fine. It doesn't matter. Move over onto Volacross, right? Volacross, full single target. Fury might perform in just generally a little better just because of how short the fight is, but arms still is just fine. Think about Larodar. There are ads in Larodar, but the ads don't really matter that much, and so many other people bring pad, you can bring a lot of boss damage. And Arms still has the niche of 2 target cleave, so if you do need to cleave down the brambles, for example, in a really quick manner, well, now you have 2 target cleave there, which is really good. And one thing that is something to be said about Arms instead of Fury is one of the annoying things about the Fury talent tree is this talent here called Frenzy. I don't like this talent. Where is it? Right here, Frenzy. Rampage increases your haste by 2% for 12 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. Its effect is reset if you rampage a different target. I don't like this. It means, like on Larodar, target swapping to the roots is a DPS loss. So doing what you should do is worse for your class. Stuff like this, you don't have to worry about as Arms because you don't have that. You're just doing 2 target, which is really nice. So I think Arms for Larodar is good. For Council of Dreams, Arms is already better than Fury because it's 2 target cleave. For Naimu, single target damage is what really matters. So once again, if you're running full single target, you're hitting the boss, you're saving your 3-minute cooldowns for the ad in the back, and then you're still hitting the boss. It's all single target in terms of what you're doing. So I think Arms is totally fine on Naimu. Then back to Smolderon. Smolderon, if we look at, I wonder if there's statistics currently. I don't know how many people have swapped over. A lot of guilds like mine are basically permanently in, we're not re-clearing currently, we're permanently in Fyrak after we killed Tendril. Because obviously if you kill Tendril, you don't really want to re-clear it, you want to go kill Fyrak. So I wonder if we see, there should be, yeah, even here. Obviously they're getting some unethical PIs, right? They're getting a little unethical here. But even without it, you're still seeing Arms Warriors here, right? They're still doing very good. They're doing really good damage. So I still think Arms is totally fine and totally worth running on Smolderon. I don't even know, one thing about Arms versus Fury as well, which is difficult, is you want a different set of stats for both of these classes too, right? You want more haste crit as Arms, whereas Fury wants verse mastery. So you're kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. So until you get some more gear to really, or have the gear already to be able to swap up your secondary stats, it might be less damage for you to play Arms than it is Fury. But I still think Arms is good currently with how everything works. A fight like Tendril certainly supports Fury Warrior far better because obviously single target plus AoE, you lose very little running your AoE build, so you can get a lot of value there. I still think Tendril is going to be a Fury fight, But now I think it's on Fyrak. One of the big parts of the fight is the 2 Colossus drop and spawn, but that's big 2-target cleave, right where Arms wants to be. They're less tanky than Fury, so you'll need to play better. But Arms has a significant amount of value in that fight. The only thing that can potentially change, I'm going to be testing Arms tonight on Mythic Fyrak while we do testing. And the only thing that would really change for us is whether or not, as Arms, if I'm playing Arms because my damage is backloaded, one of the important parts of that phase is when you push P1 at 70%. It doesn't matter what your doesn't matter what's happening, but P1 pushes at 70%. So if I can play Arms and get away with playing Arms because it does less upfront damage and then get all that damage back later in the later phases while we prog, I think it'll be worth playing Arms on Fyrak as well. Because, sorry, I'm honestly, I just got really muddled talking there, but basically how Fyrak P1 works is by a certain time threshold, you want to push to 70% to get to the next phase, right? Because you want to push for timing, for cooldowns, etc., right? So you want to push at a certain time. Fury, because its damage is pretty static throughout a fight, will probably do more phase 1 damage than Arms will because of how much Fatality and Execute is backloaded into Arms. But if you can get away with playing Arms and not missing that push period, I think Arms is probably going to be worth playing on Fyrak instead of Fury. It just depends on your group composition. Can you push that P1 forward, and how it affects everybody else? Because while Arms might do more overall damage, if you need Fury's general throughput to actually push through P1 effectively, then you're way better playing Fury and making sure that push happens, instead of trying to make Arms work when it's a more detriment to your raid, right? But honestly, overall, Arms is looking pretty good in raid specifically. I still don't really think it has too much of a place in Mythic Plus. I think it can be played, but I just think Fury outclasses it based on a variety of factors. But as far as your specific question, should you put 2 points into Bleed? No. It's the same as it ever was. It will probably never change. And unless Warrior gets an entire skill tree rework, we will probably never change for Season 4 either, until our entire class tree changes with the War Within. But that's my opinion on current Arms. Good for raid, mediocre for Mythic Plus, and I think with the buffs, you are pretty much fine playing whatever you want. But yeah, that's all I really have to say outside of just completely incoherently rambling about other crap. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good one. And whether you like Arms or Fury, excuse me. I hope you have a good one and are able to play what you want. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Almost sneezed there. That was weird.